This is the 17th episode and we don't have a theme song, so I'm singing this silly tune. Oh yeah! Okie freaking dokie, everybody. Coming back like from a Lazarus pit, it is the Minsk and Friends Speakeasy with your host, Minsk.
And friends.
And friends, Joonatan is here again. Hello, welcome. Good to have you here again.
Good to have you here, and me be here, and all be here, because holy shit, it's been a year.
Yeah, I guess we cannot really get jumped into anything today yet if we don't at least somehow address the elephant in the room, which is the fact that our last episode was the best of 2021, and here we are now, a year later without any episodes. So we took the entire 2022 off on the podcast front, and only now are coming back on the saddle. So I guess I have to talk about why that happened, and a lot of it falls on me. This was not a great year in a lot of ways for myself. You fans of the YouTube channel will remember that I had to take a hiatus off for, oh gosh, how many months was it? Too many months, basically, but like a significant chunk of the year where I wasn't, able to do very much. Like behind the scenes, I wasn't able to do very much either. Do not be mistaken and think that I was just like doing a bunch of like prep work off screen. Like, no, it was a very hectic year, and if I couldn't do the regular Let's Play stuff on the channel, obviously I couldn't actually work on this podcast either. So a lot of the blame falls on me. I'm sorry for our tragic lapse here. But we're back, right? Yeah, I guess we could say that now, at least for the time being.
I hope so, at least. But, I mean, I don't think anybody can blame that, because anybody who has looked outside this past year will have noticed that it's been quite the year. I can't imagine that anybody has had a particularly fun one.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing we picked 2022 to take this year sabbatical, because it's a year where nothing happened. So we had definitely nothing to talk about in these last 12 months.
No, just in terms of like what goes on in the gaming industry, what's been released. I mean, complete silence. Nothing important, nothing interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I have no opinions that we could have possibly been sharing about anything. Good heavens. I mean, let's be clear here. The year started with Sony being like, "Gee, that's a nice bungee you have there. We're gonna take that now." And a little later, then Microsoft being like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna take the bungee. We're gonna take the Activision." So there, yeah, and that's the start of the year. That's how we got started in like early spring. So what a mood setter, huh?
Yep.
Not to speak, of course, there's been awful stuff in the real life, unfortunately, as well. We don't want to get too much into like actual outside of the game sphere, but it's even impacted the game sphere, so gotta acknowledge that it's been something, huh?
It's been quite the year. I am not sad to see it go, and I do wish that this nonsense worldwide would start to simmer the fuck down pretty soon.
But I don't want to be doom and gloom here. I do have to say that this year was also a lot of great opportunities for myself. Like I feel like I managed the knocks that life provided better this year. So I've had a real thrill when when my channel resumed Let's Playing. Like some of the best games I feel like that I've recorded, I've been doing now in the latter half of the year. And on top of that, my return to doing art I've really enjoyed that. I really have been happy, despite if you look up some of the streams I've done where I talk about all the insecurities and anxieties when drawing, but I really appreciate it. And I really appreciated the small slice of internet folk who have been like, hey, this guy actually does fun pictures. So thanks for everybody who's been around for that side of my pursuits. How's about you, Joonatan? Have you been able to make the most of this year and whatever challenges and trials have been thrown your way?
Well, I've had the same. I've had a really tough year with just way too much work, way too much everything, and right now it looks like that next year I will most likely be shuttering at least my own work on Toisto completely, because it's just getting to the point where there's not enough readers, and it is becoming harder and harder to maintain. So whatever is going to happen next year is going to be still a mystery. I don't know yet, but this year has essentially been that Muhammad Ali George Foreman fight where Ali just pounds Foreman for 20 minutes before Foreman goes down, and Ali just goes like, "Well, you're not worth it anymore." And I'm George Foreman in this case.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, just to clarify, which one are you in this?
Yeah,
scenario?
I am the one who's getting the snot kicked out of them.
Okay. Oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that you're at such a point, but I really hope we can. I hope we can get an upturn in everything, even if because I do know you do have some great opportunities still available for you that I'm privy to, and I hope those pan out really well for you.
I hope so, at least.
All right. Let's see. So, we missed the entire year. So, is there anything interesting before we get? Of course, this is our best of 2022 year. We're going to be rattling off our top 5, and Joonatan, of course, has done extra credit. Once again, has a top 10 list to provide us, but both of us will be giving a top 5 in more detail. But before we get to that, is there anything in the gaming world that you want to go back to, revisit here now, to talk about real quick that we didn't have a chance for?
I'm trying to think, but like it's been such a year. I think the biggest probably like in terms of like is that whole purchasing between them buying Bungie and the massive sales that are going on, because they haven't even they haven't locked any of those down yet, and like the most recent thing at the time of recording has been that the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, initially said that they would not allow this deal to happen.
Right. It is kind of like looking like a bit of monopolization.
Right.
Consolidation is so huge in this case.
Yeah, but again, it's America, so who knows? But the more interesting question is going to be, will the European Union allow it? Because right now they've also said that they're not liking where this is going. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because even if the Trade Commission in the States lets it happen, and of course they will follow what America says, but how will that affect Europe? And that's going to cause even more division down the line.
Yeah, it's there is actual concerns from a business standpoint and just an economic standpoint from this amount of consolidation. I do share the concern of like these governing bodies. I've seen like some takes of people being happy, apart from the general fanboying for your team when people pick teams among game companies, which, whatever. But like, there's also like, because we might recall that Activision and Blizzard in particular really fell from grace last year, and there hasn't been like a major rectification for that. And I think a lot of people were putting a lot of hope in somehow the Microsoft purchase would shake things up and improve the culture there. I think that's a little misplaced to, I don't know, to have like a huge company try to fix another huge company. That's putting a little too much faith in that. So I can't say I'm entirely excited by the prospect, but
yeah, those kind of problems are things that don't just get fixed by throwing money at them. And right now, despite multiple court cases going on and multiple small changes happening, it really still feels like that they're dragging their heels as much as they can.
It would be great if like Bobby Kotick was like put into retirement. I'll come out and say that like it would not fix the endemic problems there necessarily, that one action, but like it would be a start at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, but I guess there's no use but follow how that development goes. Not much the two of us can do to affect that situation.
Yeah, it's not like they're going to be listening to this at Bungie going like, well, Minsk and friends said so we better get on it then.
Yeah, but we gotta rethink this whole thing, guys. I don't know. Two tired guys from Finland are feeling not great about this, so...
Yeah, shut it down.
Very good. Well, I wanted to bring up something that I think a lot of the international audience missed, but this is a cool thing about games journalism. Not just games, but the journalism aspect. I wanted to shout out the very long-running Finnish games journal Pelit, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. And I think that's super neat that in a field which, journalism in general is somewhat in shaky grounds, and I think games journalism in particular, like surviving in a print magazine format, I think that's a real huge feather in Pelit's cap. So I realize our international audience might not understand, but this has been a kind of a cornerstone of Finnish games culture for 30 years, and I am super happy. So I just wanted to shout out everybody who works at Pelit for reaching this milestone.
Yeah, congratulations. It's insane.
And I think, I don't know, maybe this is me now rooting for my home team, but I've always felt like Finnish games journalism has been like a pretty high standard compared to like you hear about the issues with how like games journalism is a little too close to like all the companies oftentimes in like international circles and stuff. But I feel like Finnish has been like a higher standard, like not just Pelit, but like Pelaaja is another big magazine which I think has done good work, and like online Finnish game scene. I think it's been pretty good here, so I'm pretty happy with in general the work that's been done in our circles. I don't know what you think.
I think there's certainly some people who are exceedingly good at their job, who do a lot of really, really good work. And for a small country like this, that is saying a lot.
I've always reminded of, speaking of Pelit then, it's one of the Call of Duties. I'm going to guess it's Call of Duty World at War, because it's World War II themed, but it was, when Call of Duty was like really, really, really exploding. And I know like a Pelit journalist was like flown to an event at, it was in like Poland or somewhere. And it was a really big event, but like he was pretty scathing about like how superfluous it was, because there was like this weird World War II reenactment that all the journalists were put into, where like they were kidnapped by German soldiers, quote unquote, and then saved by Allied soldiers, and there was just this weird like reenactment act that they went through, and you could smell the like unimpressedness in the article, and I kind of think that's cool that they were actually willing to like be that honest, because the company put a lot into that event, clearly. So I've always been like, that's kind of cool that they were willing to be that upfront about them. how over the top and kind of pointless it all was.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we jump off the Pelit train, I wanted to really quickly, because I have here open their March issue, which was the actual anniversary. And of course they have the top 10 games of the last 30 years from the journal's life cycle, as voted by their readers. So I wanted to really quickly shout these out, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's freaking go, because I think at the end it's fun, because this maybe says less about the games and more about the readers, I think is the fun thing here. But let's see, starting from the bottom, at number 10, the original Doom. At number 9, World of Warcraft. At number 8, Deus Ex, the original one. At number 7, Final Fantasy VII. Hey, I didn't even think about that. They actually hit 7 with the... that's cool. Number 6, Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge. Number 5, Dark Souls. Number 4, Baldur's Gate 2. Number 3, Fallout 2. So hey, 2 prizes for Black Isle there. Well done. Number 2, UFO Enemy Unknown, which for our American listeners, if you're like, what the heck is that? That's the original XCOM, was called UFO Enemy Unknown in Europe. So there you go. And finally, number 1, which, this kind of surprised me, Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is apparently the reader's favorite game from the last 30 years. So, what do you think? Is it an interesting list?
It's pretty much what I would expect.
Right.
They're hitting basically every single one that turns up in all of these votes. I'm mostly surprised at how unsurprised I am that Witcher is number 1.
Well, I'm kind of, because otherwise this list very heavily leans on 90s and 2000s games. The only other game from the 2010s is Dark Souls. So I think that's interesting that Witcher 3 was so impactful that even this readership, which seems to lean a little, older in its tastes, was besmitten by it so much. So I think that's kind of interesting. But,
well, yeah, that also makes sense. True.
But I just think it's interesting what it speaks about the readers here. If we look at this, it's very single-player dominated. The only exclusively multiplayer game here is World of Warcraft. Then, of course, Dark Souls and Doom do have like multiplayer options and elements, but they're not exactly considered central. Not to rag on anybody who's about the PvP experience in Dark Souls or about the deathmatch in Doom, but like it's not what people think of with those games. So it's like very single player focused. There's a pretty heavy focus on RPGs here, and also very PC focused. Most of these are PC exclusives or like multi-platform, but you kind of associate them with PC. The only one I'd say is Final Fantasy VII, and even that has a PC port. It's just mainly known as the PlayStation darling. But I don't know. I like this because it like I don't want to litigate it and like fight about the choices. That's whatever. That's what people like. But I just like it's interesting. Like this kind of I think shows that there's a certain audience for this journal, and I'm not surprised if like it's been the kind of audience who was there already 20 years ago reading this journal, so they might be influencing the vote a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. I thought there was just a fun little like quick study into like readership and stuff. But again, congrats to Pelit, and I hope you guys last longer in this in the environment that we're in. I was certainly happy to buy the journals this year. There's some good stuff, not just about games here. There's like a big Dune retrospective here where they talk about all the Dune games, all the movies, everything about the series in conjunction with that big old movie that was the big hit this year, and I was enlightened. So good effort all over.
I think that episode that has that big Dune thing, or that magazine that you're holding, I think that is also the one that has the review of the gaming book that I contributed in.
Right, I forgot about that, but that's right. Your book got featured there as well. I say your book, the book you're a part of.
Yes, no, it's mine. It's all mine.
yes. Let's remember who matters here. No.
But yeah, no, I remember because that Dune article is I hope I'm not completely wrong about this, but I'm fairly certain that book or that Dune thing is written by the guy who also wrote about Dune. Or wrote into our book. I don't think he wrote about Dune because I know that another person wrote about Dune for the book, but he is one of the writers who was also in that book.
I see. Interesting. Well, he did a spectacular job on like covering all the bases on the Frank Herbert classic. So yeah, makes sense that he'd appear as a co-writer in your work.
Yeah, he is super smart, and his whole thing was really, really great. I also really like that Dune article.
By the way, just not even like subtle plug here, but the book we're talking about, it's unfortunately only in Finnish right now, so our international audiences can't appreciate, but there's a great book called Grimmin saduista kontrolliin, which is about the relationship between literature and video games. And Joonatan wrote a really cool article, a really cool chapter into this essay collection. I highly recommend it for anyone who can read Finnish.
And hopefully we can get it translated at some point. I think that 'cause I still own the right to the essay, so I do believe at some point we will be able to get that online in English.
I sure hope so. I'd love to see this shared for a wider audience even further, because there's good stuff here. It's not just talking about Finnish stuff, obviously. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't think there's much more to dissect about this year. So should we maybe move on to the meat and potatoes of our episode here?
Yeah, let's do.
So, yes, as is tradition this is now the third time we're capping off the year, we are going to be talking about what our favorite video games were this year from 5 up to 1. But before we do that, why don't you give us your 10 to 6, because you actually put in the time to play 10 whole games. I have to admit, I struggled because this year was so hectic. I barely squeaked out 6 games, I think, that I played this year. So I wouldn't even be able to do a top 10.
All right, well, I'll do really quickly then. And I actually even went and did a top 5 worst games because I didn't know what we were going to be doing, so I just went overboard just in case.
Well, goddamn. Well, I guess we can look at it. I don't like celebrating like the worst stuff too much when you have like a big year in review thing, but I guess we can go.
It's usually pointless because if it's bad, it's bad, and you don't need to start harping on about it.
And I don't want to dunk on whoever made it too bad. We don't know what tribulations they went through to try and make whatever, ended up being unsatisfactory. So,
Right, unless you're the guy who made that weird gladiator game and then started hiding anti-vaxxer and misogynistic notes into the patch notes and the update files.
Yes, okay, so sure, there's caveats in any case, sure.
Yeah, but if unless you're that extreme point, of view, then maybe we don't harp on you.
Yes, yeah, I don't think most people fall under that umbrella, I hope, so, yeah.
Yeah, I hope not. All right, but let's go from here. So Number 10. Number 10 is one that was very early in the year. It is Ollie Ollie World.
Ooh, right, that skateboarding game.
Yeah, and I really like the original Ollie Ollie games. And then this one was just even more fun. It's pure gameplay because there's a story, but it's kind of pointless. The main fun is just trying to constantly beat yourself, trying to make constantly better runs in these really impressively detailed worlds that are colorful and really meticulously designed. Like, I've been playing it on and off again ever since I reviewed it, and I played the expansion pack, and every time I just feel like that, even though I've gone through all the levels, that I want to go back and see something new in them. Really great stuff, a really wonderful game, and just one of those things that I don't like sports games usually, so finding something like a skating game that I find inclusive and fun and something that doesn't, push me away with really bizarre mechanics it's a pretty big thing.
Okay. Yeah, well, I do remember it popping up. It's very different from the first thing you think of in skating games, the Tony Hawk stuff. But
yeah,
I remember it seeming very cute when it came out.
It is cute. Is very very inappropriate way to describe it. I will mention now that I did not put any kind of re-releases onto this. So
okay.
Otherwise, I noticed that if I would have put anything that's a game that came out like a year ago or a previous year, and it's now on another platform, I realized that I would have again had to put Disco Elysium as the best game of the year, and that would have been Disco Elysium for 3 years running.
But deserved? ?
It is, as tempting as it is, and as it is one of my favorite games of all time, possibly even vying for that number 1 spot as my favorite game of all time. I can't do 3 years. It feels like cheating.
They've gotten plenty of awards at this point, so they've earned their spot in video game pantheons, I think.
It's true. So, number 9, Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga.
Oh, interesting. This actually made your top 10 list. All right.
I'm usually not a huge fan of the Lego games. They're the kind that I will play for a little bit and go like, oh, this is cute, and have a little bit of a laugh on it. And then I'll just drop it and never touch it again.
They have this, like, junk food of gaming energy to me when I look at, or maybe that's too mean to say junk food, but like, you know, like kind of like not a lot of like juiciness to the Lego games. It's just something fun, like a fun side attraction.
That's very accurate, and they are family games, so they have to be made for everybody.
Yeah,
but this one, this is also because I love Star Wars so much.
Right.
So this kind of tickled that part, that you can go play through all the episodes, you can go through the entire story. There's big semi-open world hubs where you can do little side missions, and you know, hundreds of characters from the games and from the movies and from the comics and everything. It's an entire celebration of what makes Star Wars fun.
Okay.
To the point that even when the tedious bits, and there are a lot of really tedious bits in the game,
Right.
I didn't really mind them that much because I had so much fun playing it.
Right. Well, that's. I mean, I remember the previous Star Wars games. The like cutscenes were really funny because back then the Lego games were unvoiced, so they had to like pantomime a lot of the like Lego scenes. I remember already back then those were like a source of lots of funniness. Like how they do the "I am your father" scene without any dialogue is hilarious.
Yeah, there's one of my favorites I can't remember which of the things, but there's one where they're like, they're trying to talk to Anakin for the first time, and then there's just a guy in the background selling giant red flags and big warning signs.
Amazing.
It's one of those. It reminds me of the Airplane movie or the National Lampoon's movies.
That's true.
Hiding jokes in every single scene, and I love it so much.
Trying to be goofy as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Nice.
Number 8, Return to Monkey Island.
Oh, wow. Okay, I was actually expecting this to maybe breach your top 5. So, okay.
No, it unfortunately it takes way too long to get going to warrant a higher place, and there's a couple of things in it that would be plot spoilers, but a couple of things in it that really bother me.
Okay.
That feel like that it's kind of Ron Gilbert working stuff out that I don't think really belonged in the game.
Interesting.
But then when it opens up, when it gets over these things and starts kind of chugging along on its own pace and doing something new, then I found it to be really enthralling and really lovely. I think there are some elements there showing that that the writing team has maybe been condensed a little bit because some of the puzzles are not as good as in the early games.
Okay.
But then again, the humor is still really good. There's a lot of really great laugh-out-loud jokes. The voice acting is awesome. It looks beautiful. And it's a joy seeing Monkey Island again. So on those merits, I do think that it belongs on the top 10 list. I don't think it belongs any higher than this, though. Fair
enough. I have to, I guess, shamefully admit at this point, I didn't bring it up back when the news was hot, but I didn't find the art style all that great, the new one. But, I didn't want to talk about that because, people took it in such an ugly direction. That's not cause for everything that happened.
Yeah, and Ron Gilbert has said that he's not going to talk about Monkey Island again because people just started so viciously attacking and harassing him.
Yeah, and I've heard that it's better in motion once you play the actual game. The graphics do eventually work, and you said it's beautiful. So
I think it looks beautiful, and I'm just, that stuff upsets me because fans really don't have any say in this. If the artist wants to make something, it is not the fans' job, or even they don't have any ground to stand on. I'm a fan myself of many things, and I would never assume that I would have this kind of gall to go to a creator of something and say, hey, I don't want you to do that because it's not what I like. If I don't like it, then I'll just, not watch it or not consume it like a normal, decent human being.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what happened to me because I haven't had a chance to play that yet. I'll probably play it maybe sometime in the future. But yeah, I was just like, well, but I felt like this kind of pang of guilt knowing that other people were taking it way too far with the whole new look thing. So yeah, I feel a bit conflicted with this game, but...
Yeah, I still enjoyed it. I think you will enjoy it as well, because it's a really old school kind of game, and if you like Monkey Island before, I think it's going to be like 10 minutes, and you're not going to notice any of the visual changes. You're just going to be like, oh great, this is old school Monkey Island.
Sounds great.
Alright, number 7, Triangle Strategy.
Ooh, so I will really quickly say that this is actually what I feel worse than the Monkey Island thing. Freaking tactical RPGs are one of my favorite genre, and they are having a renaissance right now, but I haven't been able to play any of them because I know what a commitment and time sink they are. I've barely made forward progress in Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I talked about like a year ago. So this one is kind of like, man, I should have supported this game, but I have not had a chance.
Right, and I mean, next year we're going to be getting, I think we're getting Triangle Strategy 2 and Octopath Traveler 2 next year.
Jesus, they're making a sequel already, like a year later?
They are.
Good lord. Oh, I'm never going to get to these games. I feel so bad. Oh.
But yeah, I liked it. It's again, it's a massive commitment, but it's... For somebody who grew up with all these games like Final Fantasy Tactics, this is just, it's such a lovely thing to go back and play these again.
And yeah, it looks damn fantastic. Everything I've seen, it looks like exactly what I would enjoy and sinking time into.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that I had a couple of, chances to travel this year. I went to Gamescom and to a couple of film festivals, and this was the perfect thing to take on, when you're in an airplane, you're masked up and you're kind of in your own little cocoon anyway, and then just put on some Bluetooth headphones and just start playing, and then you don't even notice the time go by because you're just spending all of it trying to, get through this amazingly beautiful world and intricate plotting and really, really, really well-made levels.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Oh, man. I think I need to make time for this game.
Yeah, and I will mention as a good I kind of deliberated I want to put both on the list, but I ended up putting just one. Mm-hmm. But also the remaster of Tactics Ogre, right, which is really good. Yeah, really good as well.
Original's really good, so they didn't have to work too much to keep this one also good.
Yeah, it's great. All right, moving along to number 6 before we get into the top 5s. Number 6 is Cult of the Lamb.
Oh, this was a complete mystery because I haven't really looked into what exactly it is. I just know that everybody was streaming it for a while.
Cult of the Lamb is basically what would happen if somebody took the style of Binding of Isaac and Don't Starve and then kind of combined it with this roguelike city builder where you play the literal sacrificial lamb who gets sent back to Earth and told that you have to start harvesting humanity to create your own cult to appease the old gods who have saved you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's really wild. It's often in poor taste, but it's also hysterically funny.
Okay.
And there's something that just makes me just so joyously happy to be able to control a little tiny lamb who wields, the sword of doom and just wipes out people and then subjugates them to with these kind of very, very cutesy little things of oh, the lamb is gonna put you to work on the fields now, and then everybody's just in chains and everything, and you're still the cute little lamb prancing around them.
Yeah, okay, that sounds very, very demented sense of humor.
It is. I really liked it. I thought it was, on top of that, it was really fun to play. It is, it's surprisingly deep once you get into it. And but most of all, even though it's deep and it's difficult at times, it's accessible. You can really easily pick it up. And even though like I put it down after, like I tried it at Gamescom, I put it down for a while and came back to it to actually review it, and I found that you could just easily pick up where you were. And you don't have to start like going back and thinking, oh God, how did I build my city? Did I have it? How were these things set up? You don't have to worry about it like in a normal city builder. So
okay.
there's that level, which makes it so much more fun then.
Yeah, it does sound. Yeah, that's yeah. There's a time and a place for those like more I don't know, clinical city builders, but that sounds like a fresh thing to have this side to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of it. So if you get a chance, do try it. It's not a very expensive game, and it's a lot of fun.
Nice. We'll keep that in mind as well. Cool. And I guess I can really quickly mention my number 6 then, since I did say earlier that I had a definitive 6 games. So
yeah,
I can say which one didn't make the cut on my top 5. It was Trek to Yomi, which it was cool. It had like really neat presentation, but the actual meat of the game didn't warrant it making my top 5.
I watched your playthrough of it on your YouTube channel, and I thought that was a really good one.
Okay, I what did you as a film buff? What did you feel when I tried to like be Kurosawa perspective guy here with my rather limited knowledge?
I mean, considering that the game itself is very limited in its references, I don't think that you would need to worry about that. I thought that it was exactly the amount of insight that needed, and I was really happy to see that you picked up on those things and that you could articulate them so well. So I thought it was a lot of fun to listen to, and I really enjoyed it. Like I did not enjoy the game itself because I also reviewed it.
Okay,
but I do appreciate what the game was trying to do.
That's kind of where I am. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to play it again, but...
No, not at all.
Those opening levels and how, like, well that Jidaigeki look was realized definitely at least earns, like, a tip of the cap for Flying Hog games.
Yeah.
Cool beans. But I guess now we can jump into, like, the actual the upper crust of our lists. So shall I jump right away into my number 5?
Go for it.
Groovy. This one's the only one that's a dedicated multiplayer game on my list, and it is Gundam Evolution from Namco Bandai.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I'm still a little bit out on outs with Activision and particularly Blizzard. So I, a new Overwatch this year, I had like zero interest. But Namco Bandai was like, we're going to make our own hero shooter, and it's about Gundam, which happens to be one of my absolute favorite things. So I was very much on board, and I'm happy to say that they did a really good job in like inserting this franchise into a hero shooter format. There's how many? There's at least 20 robots, I might be getting closer to 30, representing like a broad swath of the whole 40-year-old franchise. And there's like really creative ways that they've like implemented these some characters. Like some of these robots only show up in like a few episodes in their original series, but they like really squeeze out like fun ideas to like turn them into hero shooter characters. And there is some innovation. There's not a whole lot on the formula, but what they've tried to do is like remove the concept of roles. You have like attacker, defender, medic roles. They've tried to really broaden the idea of what everybody can do in it. So no one's like, some are really good at medicing, obviously, but there's enough like options to do other stuff that you don't feel pigeonholed into the role you are taking. Like I early picked up on the Dom Trooper, which is, for Gundam fans, if you don't recall, is the big chunky guy who has like skates on the ground with like thermonuclear jets. So he's like really fast attacker, and he like moves around with a bazooka. So he in this game is it's very much like a kind of you want to play this Dom Trooper as a flanker. Really, you move really fast and you fire like this area damage bazooka. But at the same time, they've given the Dom Trooper like these mines you can set. So you absolutely have like a defensive role. You can like speed around and set mines everywhere. And they gave you like this armor boost gun, which increases units' maximum health by, a little bit. It's not like a huge boost, but it's like enough to like, if you're flanking and you see your like main attacker guy, like a Gundam Barbatos or a Sazabi, like running into there, you can like give them that extra pep to like give them a little bit of edge in the coming encounter. So yeah, I'm like 100% on board now. I hero shooters in general didn't exactly get me, but they introduced hero shooters to a franchise I love, and they did a really good job.
Is this a free game?
It is. That's the best part, the price. Yeah, it's a free game. And I guess there we can get to some of the negatives, why it's only at my number 5. The perks for the monetization isn't very interesting. The battle pass is pretty lackluster. And the like rewards you get aren't super great. Like the skins are a lot of just like recolors for the units that aren't like mind-blowing. So like, the sense of progress in unlocking stuff isn't exactly present there. Of course, for some that's probably a bonus, so you can just focus on the gameplay. So probably, honestly, someone's like, that sounds great. But yeah, it's a free game, and it is. They've weird region locking, but they did open it for Finland eventually. So I recommend it if it's available in your place.
Oh, wonderful! I will have to give it a look.
Yeah. I will say the one other thing why it's like my number 5 spot rather than higher is it's a budget game, and visually it's pretty low. All the robots, they did a great job, so obviously that's the like starring role, so good job on that, but the environments, the levels aren't very evocative, and the scale of the robots is completely lost. Like my nephew, every time we tried this game out, my nephew would call out how they're supposed to be 20-meter tall robots, but you're just running around in rather generic-looking stages, which means you're running around in gigantic buildings. So you kind of forget that you're supposed to be a giant robot most of the time. You just feel like a guy on a field. And that's a bit of a shame, really, because I, as a fan of the mecha genre, the sense of scale is pretty important to me, and it's a little sad that it isn't realized here in a significant way.
I will say that the one thing, apart from your rave review, that has now convinced me to download this is I'm looking at the Steam page for this. And the first review recommending it says, recommended Overwatch with hotter characters.
Well, yes, for all the robosexuals out there. Oh, baby, this one's it. Is that the freaking... That's the freaking... The nerdy girl from Haganai. We don't have many friends. She was like, no, I don't read doujinshi about the pilots being in love. I want to read about the robots. So apparently she's typing Steam reviews now. That's fantastic.
Apparently so. But yeah, I have this now on download, so we can try that out at some point. I look forward to seeing how it works.
Sweet. I'd love to at least give the intro a run. It's rough around the edges, and I probably Overwatch 2 has the competency behind it. But as a free option for a hero shooter, this has tons of potential, and as a fan of the series, I would love so many robots to still get like introduced into it. There's so many fan favorites that aren't in there in the like 25 or so right now that I would just love to be realized in this format.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Let's move over to your number 5. What's the first one of your top 5?
My number 5 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge.
Let's go. That's a good one because we played that together, and you can find the stream of that archived on my YouTube channel, the one you're watching right now.
Yeah, we played the whole thing from start to finish together, and it was a lot of fun. And afterwards, I've gone back and I've played it multiple times again
Yeah.
on my own, and I've played it online with some strangers, but especially with friends, it's so much fun. It's just, for a Turtles fan, and even for a casual Turtles fan like myself, who is, let's face it, way too old to be to be into this stuff. I really thought it was just a great blast from the past. I thought everything about it was something that was lovingly realized for modern audiences. It felt great to play. It's just one of those things that I look forward to over the years, just picking up again and just going and playing a little bit and putting it back down in the way that games used to be. That you don't have to sit down and put a 60-hour endeavor into it.
Right, I totally vibe on that. Its pick up and playness is really good. Although those final like 5 or so levels are really challenging. So I imagine the pick upiness goes down a little bit if you've gotten rusty after a long while, and then trying to play those again right away.
I guess so, but then you can unlock, more characters and stuff. Like I went and tried out immediately Casey Jones when I could.
Absolutely.
And just found it to be a completely different kind of fun to play after playing as the Turtles.
Yeah. There's good variety with these characters. Definitely, it's pretty cool that there's even some playstyle variation there.
Yeah, and let's give a shout out to that amazing soundtrack, which just kicks so much ass.
Oh my god, yes, the freaking... I was a little like, what the heck, when the Shredder music started during our playthrough. I've gone back and listened to it, and it's so superb. It's a rap battle between the Shredder and the Turtles, made by the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yep.
Wow, it's so good.
It's amazing. It's just, everybody is so into it. They know exactly what kind of music they're making for exactly the kind of game they're making, and it's just a joy to see.
Yeah, it's a freaking blast from the past, so big ups for Turtles.
Indeed. All right, shall I say my number 4 then?
Yeah, let's jump over to tier number 4. What do you got next?
My number 4 for the year is Elden Ring.
Elden Ring! Oh my goodness! Freaking, what is it? From Software's magnum opus, question mark.
Yeah, and this was something that I actually initially struggled, because when I got this to review at the start of the year, the review copy was not, I wouldn't say very broken, but it was kind of broken. It was broken to the point that I was like, oh, this is really rough. And I gave it 3 stars in the initial review. And then,
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and then the moment I published it for the embargo, and then on the day that it came out, they published a big day 1 patch that actually went and addressed a lot of my concerns, including they changed the camera around, they fixed a lot of the issues with characters or enemies suddenly disappearing behind the camera, and just went and fixed a bunch of, and over the months since, they've fixed it even further. And it has gotten a lot more fun to play. And since then, I have put, I think, like 200 or so hours into it.
Jesus.
And we played it, we modded it, and we played it as a multiplayer with you and one of our other friends.
Yeah, for clarification for people at home, there is a multiplayer element in it right now, but it is that like From Software-y kind of tricky to use multiplayer, and the multiplayer like turns off every time you beat a boss. But there's a mod which makes it like streamless constant multiplayer is what we were using.
Yeah, and that streamless or seamless constant multiplayer is really amazing, and it was a lot of fun. And I every once in a while I get a hankering to go back to it, and I don't think that I will until the expansion pack, the inevitable expansion pack, comes along.
Yeah, I think they've been teasing something like that.
Yeah, there's something coming hopefully soon, but I really ended up, like, the more I think about it, the more I enjoyed it. I think some of the bosses are really poorly balanced. There's maybe even there's a greater leap in this one between the really, really good bosses and the really, really bad bosses compared to previous ones. Like previous games, they all felt pretty damn good. And then, like, in this one, you'll have some that are, like, exemplary, like, really amazing boss fights. And then some that are just, like, I still wonder how the hell did they make it through any kind of quality assurance.
I've heard also that once you get closer to the end of the game, like in the last stretch of the game, the boss difficulty jumps up insanely, where it's like it's almost not possible to do a lot of the like mandatory bosses with like solo gameplay. Like you almost have to at least use the in-game summoning of like NPC ghost thing to like give you any kind of edge in the fights.
Yeah, and it gets to that point where you have to essentially build a very specific type of character if you're playing alone, and you can't play it in the way you want it to. I'm sure, there's gonna be the toxic crowd around it just going like, oh, you just gotta get good, you just gotta dedicate your life to this. Don't do anything except play this for 15 hours a day.
You just get frame perfect these dodges every time in this 10-minute long fight.
Right, and then you'll have fun.
Yeah.
But no, I think that, if ignoring those, it's such a vibrant and such a beautiful world. There's so much fun things to explore in it, and there is just it's open world design done in a way that doesn't piss me off in the way other open world design usually does.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's very it's chock full of content that feels well, I don't know. It's not like repeating content all the time, but there's some amount of repeating, but it feels like substantial. The stuff hidden in all the little nooks and crannies of the world.
Yeah. How about you? What's your number 4?
All right, well, number 4 is the one I'm dreading to bring up, but honestly, I'm glad you came out with number 4 as Elden Ring to like share the like backlash we might get, because my number 4 is also Elden Ring.
Oh.
Yeah. So now last year we finally had the same game in our list on different spots. This year we actually got the same spot for the game.
Nice.
Well, I think what I'm dreading is because my review is going to be slightly even more critical tone, because this is obviously, I don't want to take from the experience from anybody. This was a super substantial experience for a lot of people. It's gotten so much rave and love from everybody, and that's great. I did not find that I enjoy the Dark Souls formula in an open world setting, so I kind of fell hard on Elden Ring, and I haven't actually felt any desire to get back to it.
No, I get that. I think that the reason why I think I preferred us playing the modded multiplayer together more so than the other stuff was because it made the game feel less Elden Ringy and more accessible in a way, if that makes sense.
I can see that. I can see that. For myself, I've never super enjoyed the multiplayer element of Dark Souls. I kind of like the isolation when you're solo playing it, but this game doesn't really. Look. I'll start with the good stuff because I don't want to be. It's our top 4, so I don't want to be positive here. Yeah, game is freaking beautiful. Really like imaginative scenery, and the dungeons that we talked about. There's really good stuff. Some repeat themselves a little bit, and I enjoy the castle. The castle you do at the start, Stormvale Castle. That's a really good classic Dark Souls level with cool like backstory, and the enemies there are really unique. The birds are very interesting. The gimmick of like sneaking around on the rooftops, that's a fun new one. And bosses are pretty interesting, but I don't feel because I freely admit that I'm the kind of more open world player that apparently is designed for modern open world that gets so much critique. I play them very linearly. I don't feel the like burning desire to go off the beaten path. And Elden Ring does this really cruel thing where it does have an indicator on where to go, but if you try to follow that indicator, you just get your ass handed to you by Margit the Fell Omen, which is, I would probably say, maybe tougher than any boss in the first Dark Souls. Certainly close to the final boss in terms of what it requires to beat that guy. And I Because of course people will say, well, then you don't fight that guy. You're supposed to then adventure on your own and level up and gear up and then prepare. But I just I don't like figuring out where to go. I'm helpless like that. I need my guidance. So it's what the game's asking from me is what a lot of people have wanted from open world games, and I respect that, but I didn't really want to bite with that. I'm sorry to admit that.
No, there's nothing to be sorry about that. That's a perfectly valid thing to want from your open world, and I think that it's good to be able to know that of yourself, and to say that, hey, this is something I just don't enjoy. Like I said, I've been catered to a lot by open world games on that front, so it's great that this option came here and also presented an alternate take on how to do these games. But the thing I'm feeling right now is more than ever, I just kind of want to play Sekiro now, because I believe that's the complete opposite in terms of level design. It's a very, very straightforward game, and you're supposed to just kind of take on the encounters it provides and figure out how to beat them, and there's no go elsewhere and pick up more levels and resources and you'll do better. You just kind of are supposed to surmount the obstacles. I think that's how Sekiro works. It does, and I think with Sekiro, for me, and this is why I liked Elden Ring, is because Sekiro had parts in it where it just stopped me from playing it, because there was a boss fight that you had to complete, and it was so difficult that I couldn't beat it. And I was just like, well, fine, I won't play the game then, which sucks because I really love it.
Yeah.
And then with Elden Ring, it was like, oh, I can't beat this boss, but I can still explore the entire world.
Yeah.
So I kind of, that's what draws me into it, because I don't have the patience to keep just throwing myself at a boss, trying to hope that I can beat it. And Sekiro, I love Sekiro, about 80% of it. And then the last 20% of the game is just so insanely difficult that I don't have the interest to go and finish it, because it gets to the point where it's so difficult that it's just not fun anymore.
Right. Yeah, and that's also I'm kind of oh, do I want to commit to that? But the thing is, like you said, where you find an opportunity in the I'll just go elsewhere and figure out do other stuff for a while and gear up. I just feel no, I don't want to I just want to take this guy out, this freaking Margit, which I did take out, if anyone's wondering, did this scrub even get past this guy? Yes, I did eventually. And I have to say, a lot of people are, everyone wants to dual wield because they're cool, and then they get their ass kicked because they don't have a shield. Freaking Margit, his energy weapons completely bypass most starter shields, so I'm not impressed by people who are just use a shield and you'll beat that guy. I call dinkum on that.
Well, it's also the bullshit that you just gotta play this exact specific way if you wanna get through it, and it's well, that takes away from the whole purpose of playing the game that is supposed to be a role-playing game.
Yeah. I guess. Although obviously there is a lot of options if you are willing to go around and find stuff in the world to build your character up to take that guy on. So I'm not saying it's some kind of very hyper-specific way to fight that guy. But the point ultimately is that I just knew after beating Margit and after we beat the guy after that in the castle,
Godric the Grafted.
Yes, many arms man.
Yes.
After that harrowing encounter, I just had this realization of if I'm gonna want to continue down the main path, and every time I'm gonna hit a boss, I'm gonna be wondering but should I go off and gain more levels elsewhere? How many am I gonna need? What exactly am I gonna need to beat this guy? I don't want to juggle that stress. So that's why I kind of bounced on the game.
Completely understandable.
Yeah, and that's why Sekiro, I'm well, the game just wants me to beat this guy, so there's nothing ambiguous about what I'm supposed to do. So that's why I'm finally leaning on that. But
yeah. So agreed. Number 4 for both of us, Elden Ring. What a piece of shit.
Exactly. And oh boy, the couple of games I've elevated over Elden Ring, oh man, I'm curious to see what the reactions from some people are going to be for that. But yeah, shall I then roll on to my number 3?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, my number 3 is also a repeating thing, so I guess we won't dwell on this too much, but I had a better time with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, so that's my number 3 spot.
Nice. Well, I mean, it's a great game. It could have been anywhere on the list in the top, in 3, 4, 5 for me.
Yeah.
I really, really also loved it, so I'm glad to see that you also enjoyed it.
Absolutely, it's just it's a bite-sized game, but there's a time and place for bite-sized games, so I enjoyed it. It's so full of, like, we talked about how, like, solid the gameplay is and, like, the music and everything, but just if we want to, like, just get nostalgia here for just a minute, it's the amount of, like, turtle stuff that they crammed in there is kind of really impressive. Like those characters that we were like, who the heck even is this? And then we looked it up, and it's like some showed up in like a single episode person, and they get to like appear for fans in the game. Lovely, really lovely.
Yeah, and one thing that I really, really loved while we were doing the stream, we had a couple of people watching it who started sending in info about this extensive lore that we were just like, what is this, or who is this from? And it's so much fun to see that, like, this game managed to capture the imagination and the attention of so many people, and in a way that people were like, oh, that's so cool, I remember that from when I was a kid.
And it's still it's an understandable plot, and it's pretty solid. Like I played it with my with my nephew and niece, who are a teenager and a preteen, and they were perfectly entertained by it. They weren't like put off by weird like old 80s content at all. So it's a really solid package.
Yeah.
I will say, I know it's kind of pointless to complain about the story in a beat 'em up game because that's so low on the priority, but I don't know, the plot was just kind of like you're chasing down the different parts of Krang from level to level, and then it's an excuse to have like every character from the show up for like a single thing. I don't know. I know I'm asking too much from a beat 'em up, but I would have liked like something a little chunkier story. I don't know.
I think for me it's because I never read any of the comics, and my whole thing has been the animated show. So for me, the plot was about on the level of what that animated show was.
Well, no, I'll definitely give you that, but since they were kind of like, let's update it a little bit from its rather simple 80s roots, then they could have also tried something with the story, maybe. But there's plenty of opportunity for that in other Turtles media, so it's ultimately a little fickle thing. So yeah, I think that's all the Turtle we can handle. What's your number 3?
My number 3 for 2022 is God of War Ragnarok.
Okie dokie, that's a strong, bold choice.
Yeah, wow, the game that everybody loves, that has been hugely critically acclaimed. Yeah, stand back, we got some hot takes over here.
Well, you say that, but there is an undercurrent that God of War is very plumb standard AAA. Like there is some amount of people who feel like that. So I don't think it was a given.
And I would not disagree with them in many ways. Gameplay wise, I even mentioned this in my review, which made a bunch of people angry. Do you remember when they did that Castlevania Lords of Shadow reboot, or they restarted the whole thing and they made Castlevania into that third-person adventure game with Robert Carlyle and Jason Isaacs in it?
Yes, I do. It was kind of Devil May Cry, Dante's Inferno inspired-ish a little bit. That wave of character action games.
Yeah, those game mechanics from that game are the exact game mechanics that they have in this game. They haven't progressed anywhere in 10 years.
Well, maybe it's just a case of a perfect game system.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So, like, in terms of gameplay, it is bog standard.
Okay.
They don't do much of anything, and like I have a huge issue with my, the watching this God of War character who is supposed to be a god, who's supposed to be all powerful, who like literally fights Thor and like leaps through time, punches people and punches like entire giants, and then he can't progress through a small wooden gate because he doesn't have the right key, or he hasn't solved the correct puzzle requiring him to spin 4 wheels here and there.
Right. I famously, for some reason, I have a really easy time disconnecting like gameplay and then this story stuff. So I very easily overlook like stuff like that. But when it's brought up, that's really funny when something like that happens.
And that's my big thing. And like the fact that it's very repetitive in many places. Like you just go to a place, you collect a bunch of the story, you collect a doodad, and you hear more of the story, and then you go to like these different arenas where you punch a bunch of people, and it's kind of repetitive. And I realize this sounds like I'm being very down on it for something that is my number 3, but the thing is, this is one of the better written games that we've had in a in this kind of a genre. Like it's not Disco Elysium, but like what is Disco Elysium? I mean, that's its own thing,
right?
But in terms of like, if you think about like this kind of series or these things are like Marvel movies, this is something that's closer to like a really well written, actually genuinely good fantasy adventure on like a Lord of the Rings scale. It has some of the most fantastic acting jobs in games that I've seen. It goes to places where it talks about the masculinity of empathy, how important it is to, let go of, the sins of the father, and understand that, you can make mistakes in your life, and you can also then try and fix them, and you can try and become a better person, and everybody has the capacity for that. It deals with a lot of these topics that I think the kind of general audience of really toxically masculine young men who like these kind of things, who go for it for her badass Kratos kind of shit, that they need to hear, and then those that haven't actually fallen down that rabbit hole yet, it's really great that they hear it now. Yeah. And it has intensely touching and emotional scenes of really strong masculine characters talking about their own fears, talking about what they are dreading to lose, and the kind of connection they want to make with people. And I was not expecting that, because the previous one had some of it, but it was still very much emphasis on the road movie. The kind of, it was a story about, this is a bad guy who learns to punch people a little bit more gently. And then in this one, I think they could even end the entire franchise here, because it has a perfect ending that perfectly encapsulates the fact that this is not the same character that was in the games 15 years ago.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree slightly. I thought the previous God of War was one of the most incredible like character redemption things, to have such an unlikable protagonist as Kratos, like be able to sympathize with the guy and like actually treat him as an okay guy at the end.
Don't get me wrong, I thought it was really great as well, but like the way where this goes, and the depths and the lengths that this goes to actually even more understand that character is just, it's absolutely stunning. And I really can't stress enough how I thought that they did a marvelous job in writing and putting together a story where your own, like the way that you are playing and your input and your part of that adventure actually feels worthwhile in terms of the narrative. I wish that if they do continue it, that they also extend this kind of thoughtfulness into the gameplay, because holy God, it is dated.
Okay, I haven't played either of these new ones. I've just thoroughly enjoyed them. Well, I haven't even had a chance to watch the new one, but the narratively, I've been super impressed by these games. I will say that the one of the big critiques for the previous one was that Kratos still got off a little light, all things considered, everything he did do. Like, the narrative of the previous game seems to mainly focus on the fact that he, like, killed his dad, when there's so many more other people he killed directly and even more indirectly by messing with the gods and stuff. So I don't know, like that. So you're saying that this game, this Ragnarok, still goes even deeper without any spoilers. Does it like actually like take Kratos even more to task?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
100% it does.
Okay, so they actually they're like addressing like that like issue with the previous game.
They do.
Okay.
They address it, and they address it really well, and they address it multiple times.
Okay, so you can be satisfied that Kratos does get his like just desserts to some extent for his work.
They make it very clear that this is a person who has an extremely long way to go to make up for everything he has done in the past.
Okay, well, yeah, color me impressed even by this non-spoilery explanation of it all.
And I will say I was very happy to see that a person that both of us like and both of us have enjoyed for quite some time, Pro CD is in it.
No way! What?
He is. He has a fantastic part that I am not going to spoil for you, but
damn it!
When he shows up, I think you're going to laugh and be as happy as I was when I saw him in the game.
Oh my god, now I'm just going to be like, well, who could he be from freaking Norse mythology? God damn it. Oh man.
It's really great. I was so happy that he's there. But in the entire voice cast, one of my favorite actors is in it. He plays Odin, Richard Schiff.
I remember you being very hyped for this.
I was really hyped because Richard Schiff is just one of these really great actors who rarely gets his due, despite that every time he shows up in either a film or, any kind of a TV show, he's always like the best thing in it. And casting him as Odin and then also modeling the character to look like Richard Schiff is just a stroke of genius because it just makes so much sense for that particular character in the way that he is in this story.
Can you please remind some of our listeners, and definitely not me, who's up on this subject, who did he play? What are some of his roles?
Well, he's probably most famous for West Wing, where he played Toby Ziegler.
Ah.
But then, more recently, I think people will have seen him in, for example, the horrible Zack Snyder Man of Steel, where he played one of the scientists. He was glimpsed partially in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. He comes and goes here, but he's a very kind of unassuming looking man. He's I think he's in his 60s by now, maybe even 70s by now. And just the way that they've modeled Odin there is really great. And once he shows up and once he starts having that, when you start hearing the kind of malice that's in his voice and you understand that this is a part that he's playing to hide, a much trickier character, it becomes such a great exercise in seeing what a good classically trained actor can do with a part like this.
Well, I mean, Norse mythology famously has opera leaning, so there's that side that probably classical actors are chomping at the bit for. So I imagine he was probably really happy to get to play the All-Father of Norse mythology, maybe.
Yep.
Well, goddamn, that sounds fantastic. Now I'm actually jonesing. Should I wait for the possible PC port, or should I just watch the playthrough? Because it sounds so good. I'm like, do I experience it firsthand, or...
I think you might enjoy it both ways because the stuff that they put on the the Let's Plays and the playthroughs, and you'll watch the story. That's the story, but then there's the amount of stuff and the amount of wealth in the storytelling in the side missions is something that you're gonna enjoy then going and exploring for yourself, because there's so many just random scenes where they talk about stuff or have little character building moments together are things that I think are going to be best experienced when you play it. But even if you watch the story beforehand in a Let's Play or one of those combinations where they just put all the cutscenes together, I don't think you're going to miss out on it. I think you're going to be able to enjoy both.
Well, goddamn. Oh, man. Something for me to think of for sure. Good job, freaking Santa Monica. Twice now you've done the unthinkable by making God of War fantastic.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, and Bear McCreary's soundtrack. Just, oh my goodness, it's so good.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that he's still there.
He is, and he is actually even better than before. He actually has written a song for this, which is just, and he sings the song, and I'm annoyed at how talented he is because it's a banger of a song, and he has a really beautiful voice. So damn you, Bear.
Damn, man. Well, that's all great to look forward to, but that was am I doing this right, your number 3, I believe?
That was my number 3, yes.
So let's roll to your number 2. What might be even better?
This is probably gonna be a little bit of a surprise for everybody.
Let's go.
Certainly was for me. Number 2 is Vampire Survivors.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, but you know what? I can see why this would be high on your list.
Vampire Survivors it came out of nowhere. I heard about it randomly. I think I heard about it, I know it was in my mind because I think I had heard mention of it in the Jimquisition. Jim Stephanie Sterling had mentioned about it. And I bumped into it, I think, on the Steam sale, because it was a couple of euros for the game. Yeah,
it's I believe it's like one guy originally made it.
Right, so it's really, really small as a team. It's 4 euros now. So I looked at it and I'm like, oh, it's, survive thousands of creatures, top-down roguelite thing. And I was initially ready kind of to dismiss it, like, I don't need another roguelite in my life, there's not. But then I noticed that there were constantly people on my friends list on Steam, like, starting to play it. And it wasn't like the same with other games where it's like this guy played it for 5 or 10 minutes or maybe an hour or two. This was like everybody who played it had 20 hours, 40 hours, 120 hours into it. And at that point, I started taking notice. And then I started playing it.
Right.
And I just kind of like figured I'll do a couple of runs just to see what this is about. And the first run was like, I don't get it. Why is this such a big deal? Because it's very different from the other kind of things that you play. And then once it clicked, I've now got like almost 50 hours into it, and I just every once in a while I'll get this kind of hankering, like an addict of some kind, just going like, oh, I could go play some Vampire Survivors.
Just one more run.
Yeah, just one more run. And it's such a perfect mix of gameplay, of really hysterically funny lore once you start reading the stuff in there, great, clever gags and pop culture references, and just most of all, really well-designed and well-balanced power fantasy. Because I'm a big fan of, I have, like, one of my biggest things that I look for in video games is experiencing those kind of moments you read about in old epics or seeing in movies where it's like, the one guy or the group of friends facing down like an endless wave of enemies or all those. And this just lets you go completely hog wild with that. Like there's the entire screen is full of enemies and they've surrounded you, and you're just, if you've built your character right, you're holding them back, by the skin of your teeth, and it's magical and wonderful and completely ridiculous. And I love it a lot, and I wish that there was a co-op or some kind of a multiplayer so that I could play it with all of you, because I think that would make it even better.
That would be really neat, and you'd think they're probably working on something like that. It's such an obvious expansion for the gameplay.
Yeah, I hope that they are working on that, because if they do, like, I will go and buy 4 copies instantly just to give it out to people to come and play with, because it's one of the most purest video games I've played in a long time, and just I can't say it enough. I really love it. I think it's so great to see indie games find this kind of a catch this lightning in a bottle, so to speak.
Yeah, I totally respect that, and probably would have been in my top 5 as well if I had actually gotten around to playing that game. This one I don't have much excuses for, since it's so cheap and it's so pick up and play, but just haven't had the chance to jump into it. I'm gonna have to wax nostalgic here really quickly, because what Vampire Survivors reminds me of is a game that's been in my brain for over 20 years, Phobia 2 by... It's by the Ilvessuo brothers, Atte and Antti Ilvessuo. They founded Red Links, the makers of Trials.
Oh, I remember, Phobia.
Yeah, before they did founded Red Links and did Trials, they made Phobia 2 in like the late 90s, which was it's the same kind of idea to some extent of Vampire Survivors, where you are a lone guy in this field where aliens keep coming at you from every side of the screen, and you have to like run to pick up power-ups to like kill them efficiently and just see how many you can kill before you're overwhelmed by the aliens. Which die rather easily. They just pop them with their special weapons and they explode, but they're just endless waves. And that's like unironically in my top 5 favorite Finnish games. This simple indie game by at the time like unknown pair of people from over 20 years ago. It's and it's always been in my mind, like it's such simple, so this one isn't even like you can't even say it's like deep. It's just running around picking up power-ups and killing aliens, but it was so addicting back in the day, and that's the first thing I thought of when I saw Vampire Survivors, and I'm like, yeah, of course this genre becomes a huge hit once it's like broadened the concept and like added the lore and like just presentation and more. This is addiction in video game form, and I totally understand why Vampire Survivors is such a big deal.
Yeah, I think you're gonna really like it when you get to it.
Yeah, gonna have to work on that too. Okay, well, I guess I'll roll on to my number 2. I'm hanging on to the other side. I won't give up till the end of me. It's Sonic Frontiers! What the hell? I have a Sonic game in my top 5?
I am shocked and appalled.
Apparently our number 2s are complete, like, out of the blue wildcard choices, but I can't not give it to this unexpectedly cool game. I think part of why I'm ranking it so high is just my sheer shock at Sonic Team coming through and making a game this good, because I've heard your takes on it. You had plenty of critique for this game, I do believe.
I ended up giving it 3 stars in my review. I don't know why, because on a like the sane part of me, it really hates it. And then the other part of me is just like, but it's so fun. Just play more of it. And then like the other part of me is just like, this piece of shit, just grumbling in the corner somewhere.
Well, I think the difference between us is you've been like perhaps wisely rather detached from the Sonic scene. And while I haven't played a lot of them, but since I'm rather tapped into like the Let's Play scene and just other like YouTube gamers and stuff, where Sonic is a very broad topic, and also I've just been on those kinds of websites where Sonic comes up a lot. I'm pretty well tapped into that series. I know what it's about, and I know what Sonic games often are like, and they've made such a well-working Sonic game, and which is respectful to all the past aspects of this long and varied series, that my hats have to come off for Sonic Team. There's huge potential here since they basically said that they're completely humbled by how big of a hit this is, and this is going to be like the groundwork for future Sonic work, and I think so. This can only go up, and it's already really good. So the thing, first of all, this had the reverse Sonic cycle. I don't know if you're familiar with the Sonic cycle.
No.
The Sonic cycle is where a new Sonic game is announced, and fans are like, yo, this one, look at what they're doing. This one is going to redeem the series. And then more stuff is revealed, more like all the jank of the gameplay comes apparent, and enthusiasm wanes dramatically, and the game comes out, and it's a very mediocre product that is another just laugh for Sonic. This was complete opposite. Like, I among many was like, oh god, trying to play Sonic in open world, how is that gonna work? But they turned it around to work incredibly well. Like, this is the anti-Elden Ring for me, because it's so easy to just go around the huge world as a lightning fast hedgehog, and all the like trials are really breezy. There's just like funny little obstacle courses to do in the world that you really quickly just bing bang boom through, and you get like really quick easy power-ups. And the dichotomy of the basic Sonic levels versus everything you do in between is something that the series has always struggled with. Like Sonic Unleashed, that was the one where he turns into the werehog. That was always, people were like, oh my god, the Sonic levels are so fantastic. But then the like God of War knockoff werehog levels are such a pain to play through, and they're like 80% of the game. So, But this one, they got it. Like, the outside of the levels, there's these nice, simple, like, regular Sonic, quote-unquote, levels that you blaze through, and there's, like, challenges. You try to do a time trial. You gotta collect all the red coins, collect as many rings as possible. Really good, like, and they're bite-sized, so it's, like, really nice, again. Like, it's a really quick, like, burst of classic Sonic. But then you still get to do all the Sonic shit while you're running around in the actual field, and it's just delightful all the time for me.
All right.
Yeah. And I will say the freaking presentation is really solid. The big problem is the draw distance is awful. I'm sure you encountered how, like, objects popping in, you have to get so close to them for, like, platforms and stuff to appear.
A little bit, but I don't know. I played on the PlayStation 5, and I noticed that I didn't have as much of an issue as people have been complaining about it. Like, my problems were mostly that I found the controllers to be fiddly and very kind of weightless.
Yeah, that's true. That's there too. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of graphical presentation, I had very few problems. I understand that the Switch version has a little bit more of this, but apparently that is being constantly patched out, that they are fixing it.
Okay, yeah, I'm not super surprised, although, you know, Sonic isn't quite the, like, graphically demanding powerhouse that some other games might be, but yeah, I can kind of see it. Yeah, but for me, like, definitely, like, when I'm trying to find, like, those collectible, like, hearts, and I have to get really close for, like, a bunch of things to pop in, and I can at least try to figure out how I'm supposed to get up there. That's the most frustrating part of the gameplay for me, is trying to figure those out. But yeah, no, and you're right, it is a bit floaty, although you can see that they've made really huge platforms all the time to counteract the little unsureness of how Sonic jumps. But the story is ridiculous, but I'm signed up for that. You know, I and the tone. I know you were about the tone, how ridiculous that is.
Well, it's not that it's ridiculous. It's just it's all over the place. It's like Breath of the Wild one moment, and then like a really bizarre slapstick the other.
Well, I think they've toned down on the slapstick here, honestly, compared to some of the previous entries, and that's why a lot of the Sonic fandom is really happy. I'm not going to say this to, like, discredit your take, because it's a, you know, or, like, you know, try to, like, be defensive about it. You know, because it's a valid take for somebody who isn't maybe as wired into Sonic. But I will just say that there are a lot of Sonic fans who are really invested in the, like, lore and longer term plot, and this game has been, like, absolutely the, like, injection into the veins that, you know, this side of people have needed. There's so many people happy with Sonic taking itself seriously.
I mean, if that floats your boat, then absolutely, that's fantastic. Because Lord knows I have my own weird things that I, you know, am invested in the lore. I definitely can't judge anybody on that. As I said, I enjoyed it against, you know, my better judgment. I'm confused as hell about it. That's why it's not in my top 10. But I'm glad you enjoyed it so much. And I'm glad to see that it was a Sonic game that didn't disappoint, because again, from what you just said and from what I've heard from colleagues, that series has a tendency to disappoint the players more often than it does making them, you know, happy.
Yeah, Sonic is in kind of an impossible position that I don't like envy the writers. If we take a quick Sonic tangent here, since the very 90s, since before Sonic Adventure, changed it, character designs and made it more story heavy, there's been so many, different, tonal takes, alternate tonal takes on it, that the fan base is really, really splintered. There was, if we go back to, early 90s, when there's just the original, Genesis games. So those are, colorful, light-hearted, fun platformer games. But at the same time, we had two different cartoons. One of them was very slapstick, so even sillier than the video games. Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is the really goofy one, which, just quickly aside, that's the one I watched as a kid, so that's I think I'm the odd one in the Sonic circles, because I like the silly Sonic. But then there was the competing Sonic cartoon, which was the one where Sonic and his friends are freedom fighters against Robotnik, who has taken over the world. And that's got a much compared to the other things, it's a darker plot. Robotnik is a serious threat, and the themes of rebellion against this oppression is a real a more mature thing, comparatively more mature. And then on top of that, you had the freaking comic books with Ken Penders once he got in, and he is an all-around awful person, so I'm sorry to bring him up, but, he was incredibly central to the direction the comic books took in the 90s. He's a guy who wants to write this, Jack Kirby's New Gods style, really grandiose mythology plot. So this is four really competing tones and takes, and we haven't even gotten, like I said, past the 90s to Sega themselves updating and trying different things. So it's really hard to make a Sonic game that would please the entire fan base, is what I'm trying to say here.
All right.
Yeah, but somehow Frontiers does it. I don't know. I still got the freaking first boss of that game. It was so good. I'm happy to say, with Margit and Giganto, the first boss of Sonic Frontiers, I've basically played the two best bosses of 2022, and it's amazing how one of them is all about substance. That's, of course, Margit. And this one's all about style. Oh my god, it's so good, the first boss. The music is this perfect for Sonic, this really angry metalcore track. And in a moment of perfect music syncing up, the opening lyrics play, Sonic's squaring off against this freaking Evangelion is basically what the first boss is. That's gigantic compared to him. And then those really, really chunky drop D guitar tunes start, and just as I hit accelerate, the guy in the song goes, "Go!" And I'm barreling 100 miles an hour into this giant monster as Super Sonic, while this incredibly angry music is playing, and I'm just going sicko mode on this monster with just the most ridiculous, over the top. It turns into a Dragon Ball Z fight, and that's maybe the happiest 5 minutes of any video game I've had this year. It was so much fun.
Well, I am super glad that you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I get that's, I don't know, I'm kind of like you, there's so much to critique it for, but since there's so much stuff giving me dumb smiles in this game, I can't not put it in my number 2 spot. That's just how it goes.
So what's your number 1 then?
Well, number 1, oh boy, this one, I am going to give my props to Mr. Shinji Mikami here in Tango Gameworks, because my number 1 is Ghostwire Tokyo.
Okay, before you go any further.
Yeah.
Ghostwire is my number 1 as well.
No way! Really?
It is.
I know you were a fan of this game, but wow, it actually got to your number 1 spot.
It is the best game I have played this year. It is one of my favorite games in many years alongside Disco Elysium, and it is just a superb experience all around. I cannot say enough about how much I love it.
Well, I'm kind of on the same line here, so... And I think we are a little bit off the general vibe. I think most people were like, it's interesting, but just another open world game. But maybe I just really wanted to visit Shibuya again, having been there a couple of times, but this was such a substantive overworld for me to explore that I love this game.
Absolutely. I think also for me, yes, because getting to go and visit Shibuya again after such a long time of not being able to be there. But I think it's weird that people are commenting that this one is just another open world game, when this one particularly comments on open world tropes and like uses them to tell a story, uses that whole thing in its advantage, where other games that are being then praised everywhere else don't do that.
Right.
And just in general, just what a beautiful story, what a extremely well told story that blends modern day, horror tales like urban legends to old folk tales and understands perfectly the kind of world that it wants to build.
Exactly. It's that's something it's an understated thing, but it always comes up in Japanese media. The dichotomy between the old legacy of this long country, the like legends, lore, the kind of way things went, compared with the hyper modern current state that Japan is. It's always coming up in really subtle ways, and in this one, it's just in full bloom, and it's just wonderful to explore these themes.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's I'm gonna have to do a little bit of a self plug because I interviewed the people who made the game earlier this year, and I was so happy to see that they had this, understanding directly of. They knew what kind of game they're making. And it wasn't,
exactly.
and of course that seems like a silly thing to say that, of course they would know what the game they're making because it takes years to make a game. But so many people don't have the kind of grasp. They kind of have an understanding they want to make an action game. They want to make this kind of a game. But these guys, when I spoke with them, they started talking about their, the literary influences of like the old Kappa book from 1912, I think. And wanted to talk about, how they wanted to capture the feeling of when they were growing up, and they had, one of them talked about how they had a dog when they were a teenager living in Tokyo, and how the feeling of one day understanding that this dog was not going to be with them anymore, how they wanted to bring that melancholy and sadness and the sense of profound loss into the game. They wanted to bring in the sensation that the Tokyo belongs to the animals and to the wildlife just as much as it belongs to the humans. Just all of that, and all of that is beautifully in the game. And every time I go back to play it, and I've gone back and replayed little bits of it here and there throughout the year, and every time I'm taken by just how complete this world feels.
Yeah, I have to shamefully admit I still haven't beaten this one either, but it's still definitely installed on my computer because like it is like a shot in my arm once again every one time I pop into it of like, oh yeah, this is the vibe I'm looking for. And oh gosh, what the hell did I still want to say about it? This is a lot to say about this game. It's so well realized. The amount of detail in the world is also like mind-boggling. If you really look carefully, like you'll see like the same like storefronts repeat every once in a while. But like I am shocked that it actually feels like a city. Like it a lot of video game cities feel small and they feel a little artificial, but this actually feels like going around in Tokyo, and sometimes claustrophobic nature and the just wild color, vista of all the like neon signs is in there that I don't know how they did that.
Yeah, it's It is a wonderful game all around. I'm surprised, but I really shouldn't be, because I remember when we talked about this when I had just reviewed it for the first time, and you said that you were excited about it, and I think it just kind of dropped off because of, again, the year being what it was. But I am so glad that we both had this, because I think it's the first time that we have a shared number one spot.
It is, yeah. This was interesting. We had 3 shared games this year, and despite you had a broad swath of games that you played, but despite that, apparently this was a very well synced year.
It was, and I mean, it's surprising. I've reviewed 62 games this year.
Holy moly!
Right, so it's really a massive amount of games, and a lot of them were things that were really good, and a lot of them were not that good. But it's interesting that then we still gravitated towards such a similar kind of collection of stuff.
Yeah. It probably speaks something to us to some level, but also speaks to what was on offer this year. It was a good year for games, ultimately, I guess we can say.
Yeah, I'm going to read a quote here from the interview I did with.
Oh, please do.
So I interviewed Kenji Kimura and Masato Kimura from Tango Gameworks, and you mentioned about the city, and there's a really good quote here from Masato Kimura saying that they did not want to create Tokyo to become a fantasy world because Tokyo itself is already fantastic as it is.
Oh, that's so beautiful. A little bit self-congratulatory, but I get it.
Well, and they also wanted to talk, like, one of the things that I really liked about what they talk about is that because they of course they live there, it's their home, that's where they've been born and raised. But they talked about, and I mentioned this to them, that one thing that always impresses me and takes me like just captures my heart when I go there is that you can have a massive skyscraper next to a 1,000-year-old temple.
Exactly.
And that was something that they mentioned in the interview. They say that that's what they wanted to keep. They wanted to keep that sense that Tokyo has been built on a foundation of legends, and it's been built on a foundation of history that really should never go away, because the moment you take that away, you take something away from Tokyo, its own spirit and what it is.
Yeah, what a freaking beautiful game. I guess so. We're not just like salivating here. I will say that probably what people don't like about the game is that the gameplay combat itself, it's not a very rewarding combat system. I do have to admit that.
Oh yeah, like some of the mechanics are very much limited by the way that this particular genre works. The combat, I love how the hand gestures work and how cool it looks, but I completely, like, it's if you really want to be, if you want to boil it down to stuff, it's the same thing as having a pistol and a shotgun and a machine gun, except that they've just been skinned to look like hand spells.
Exactly, yeah, and since it's just your hand's a different color, it also, like, it even feels like a little less interesting than, having a different kind of gun in your hand to some extent.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, look, now I'm shooting blue things. Wow.
Right. But then every time I start thinking about that and thinking about that, is this an issue? I'm reminded that I'm also getting a quest from a Tanuki gangster who wants me to go and do a mission for him and talks like an old-timey gangster. And no, I can't hate a game like that. I can never hate something like that has something as silly and wonderful as that.
Yeah, and I'm always like, I wish like side quests were given like their due. Like, I'm easy to entertain. If there's at least some plot in there, then I'm in. But this one, yeah, the side quests are always like these snippets of someone's life in Tokyo.
Yes.
It's like really fascinating, and even the collectibles are like really nice. Like you find a frilled lizard toy, one of those like Australian lizards, and if you read the blurb, it explains how in the 80s there was like this boom, like for some reason like this lizard was popular in the Japanese zeitgeist, so they made a bunch of these toys, and I'm like, I hope that's true, because that's like a really interesting little nugget, and that just made me happy to read that little story about that tiny little lizard toy I found in some guy's house.
Yeah, and then there's that really self-aware wink of an eye that you can find the tape from Ringu.
Yes.
And then it's just like, this tape was really popular and it went around everybody during the early 2000s.
Fantastic. So it's the perfect game if you are interested in Japan, I guess, and you wanna like get a taste of like actual Tokyo. Especially if you're someone like us who has like had the fortune in life to actually pop in there in person, and you're just like, oh, I want to go back there for a bit. This is incredible, this game.
Yeah, and also on top of that, if you just like good stories, because this has a really good story, and are really, and you allow yourself to be kind of be washed away by the kind of just mood of it all. I think that's going to be really good for it as well.
Yeah, just this quiet moments walking down a rain-slick alley and like you empty, just the like jingle of a faraway store. It's like I can't not like enjoy just a moment like that. Very great stuff.
Absolutely.
So freaking congratulations to Tango Gameworks. You got the coveted double #1 spot on Minsk and Friends Speakeasy. Hey, I don't think I'm not. I don't want to be a Nostradamus here, but I don't know if this game's gonna do like super hot in like other Game of the Year things this year. There's so much high competition, so I'm happy that the game got its due at least in our channel.
I can tell enough that I submitted my top 10 to a couple of places where it'll appear in like written form. And I know that at least in a couple of these places, there was a bunch of comments from people going, "Oh right, Ghostwire came out this year. I already forgot all about it."
Oh man,
and that just breaks my heart, because like I think it's a special thing, and I would love to see more people be reminded that it exists.
I think this game will come back in like. In consciousness in like a few years. I think it's going to be one of those games. If it didn't do super good now, it's gonna remain like in people's minds, and it'll be reevaluated in the future. That's my Nostradamus for today. Is this game's gonna get its due someday? I think.
Damn straight.
Holy moly! Well, that was a rollicking good time, and we had some really banger games this year, didn't we? That was good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm really glad that we got to do this. It's been a long year without the podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy that we could return. At least we had to do a best of the year thing. It's gotta give the year its due. And,
at the very least, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So with all this positive energy, I hate to say it that I don't want to make promises again about how the future of the podcast is going to be, because like my life doesn't look that much easier upcoming. So I don't want to make blanket statements of we're going to be back in January, baby. But we like doing this podcast and we like video games. So I'm sure we're gonna try and return to grace the airwaves, I believe.
We will see you next year for the 2023 Best of Games.
Well, I'll make that promise. We absolutely will do a Best of 2023. These are too much fun not to do these, but like I'm gonna try and we sneak something in elsewhere in 2023.
I really hope so, at least. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing next year. I don't know how everything is gonna go with my own thing. And if it turns out that I just end up just dropping everything and giving up, then at least I will come and do some of this stuff.
Well, I don't want that to happen, like, obviously, but certainly we'll make this work somehow, I'm sure.
Absolutely. But on at least that note, it's been a good gaming year, and it was really great to do this, and on my part, thank you. Yeah,
thank you. Thank you for joining me once again. One last ride this year for this, and thank again to all the listeners, and I hope you got good ideas, and I hope you enjoyed the takes on maybe the games we played, and I hope it's going to be a better year for you guys, just as it's hopefully going to be for us next time, yeah?
Hope so.
But this has been the Minsk and Friends Speakeasy 2022 edition, and we will catch you again in the future. So, bye-bye!
So long.